So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It is 26 October now, 2020, and thank you for joining us on Get to Know DARA. We have with us today, all the way from Elazar, Israel, we have with us Oren Farkas, Director of Management. He'll be giving part of the presentation. I'll be giving part of the presentation. And let's first, before we do anything, let's first take a look here. This is the presentation which we'll be using. Oren will be speaking at the beginning. I'll be actually showing DARA. And these are the topics we'll be covering here. Why isn't this switching? There we go. So an introduction, a big thank you. We've got a group we've been working with. We'll talk about that. The types of recommendations in DARA. What is DARA? DARA, which is based on analytics, and then we'll move into a real hands-on of DARA, accessing DARA, filtering the recommendations. We'll look at a couple of examples, not necessarily these two examples, but we will look at some examples, and managing the recommendations. This presentation is available to everybody. If you come into Google, let's go into Google and look for this presentation. So if we were to say here, let's do a Get to Know DARA. And, oh, we've got an Alma Ex Libris there. Put in the Alma Ex Libris just to narrow it. There we go. First shot is miscellaneous presentations and documents. And one of them here is Get to Know DARA. I'm going to send everybody now the link to this, so everybody will have it. We will, of course, also be posting this later on to the Alma list with a link to the recording. So everybody has a link to the presentation. And while we're at it, we have a fairly new page here. Let's go back to Google. A fairly new page here, which we're advertising now at the beginning of every lecture. So if, again, we were to do Get to Know DARA, Get to Know DARA, we'll throw in the Alma Ex Libris. So a brand new page we have is Customer Education Webinars. It's a one-stop shop for being able to see and register for all of the upcoming presentations and all of the previous recordings. So right now I'm in the upcoming tab. We have some featured presentations at the beginning, then a list of all presentations. And by just clicking on one of these, for example, if I want to sign up for tomorrow, which you're all strongly encouraged to, resource sharing with Broker Rapid ILO, you can just click that and you're brought to a page to register. And all of the previous sessions are in the on-demand. And here you've got the recordings to all of the previous sessions. So this is a nice page here. It's Ex Libris Group Com, Customer Education Webinars. And without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Oren. I will stop sharing. Oren, I'm making you the presenter. And take it away, Oren.
Thank you, Yoel. Give me a moment to share my screen. Good morning to everyone. And let me know if you can see the screen, the presentation.
Yeah, we see everything, Oren.
Great. Great. So as you all said, I will start by giving an introduction to DARA, what it is, what we're trying to accomplish. And after I do that, then I will pass it back over to you all to do a hands-on, a demo of showing how DARA works in a couple of examples. Feel free to stop to put in any questions in the chat or in the Q&A sections, and I will try to get to them either during the presentation or at the end. So first of all, an introduction. What is DARA? DARA is an acronym for the Data Analysis Recommendation Assistant. At some point, we were trying to come up with something that can assist us, that can assist the librarians and the users that are working with Alma and give them recommendations on how to work in a more efficient manner, in a better manner, to bring things to their attention. Um, and DARA is the fruits of that thought process. So what is DARA actually? DARA is an attempt to use artificial intelligence or machine learning, use Alma analytics, basically to do a few different things, either to recommend workflow efficiencies, to be able to see that other people are working in a way that might be different to the way that one particular user or institution is working, and recommend a different workflow. It might be to suggest features. They could be new features. They could be features that are underutilized. They could be features that we've received feedback for that institutions say help them work better, validating configurations, and so forth. The point of DARA is actually to leverage certain things that we have access to now in Alma. Now that we're in the cloud, it basically means that we're able to utilize this great community. It's the collaborative community, the ability to have people share with one another. The fact that Alma has grown in size to include thousands of institutions worldwide, it allows us to actually have one place where we can analyze that information, and hopefully take the things that we see from certain institutions that are happy with the way they're working, or that are working in an efficient manner, and suggest those things to other institutions as well, to allow them to hopefully create efficiencies in their institutions, or to be able to use their time in a more effective manner. Um, I'd like to start by saying, like you all said, a big thank you. We have a focus group for DARA, um, similar to what we do in many other areas in Alma and Exlibris in general. Um, the group works with a base camp, with meetings that are, I don't know, let's say bi-monthly meetings, to discuss different recommendations, to discuss different um, potential recommendations. Once we think of recommendations, or once the focus group thinks of recommendations, then we bounce ideas off each other. The focus group provides us with feedback on whether you know, is the idea any good or not, and how to tweak it so that it's providing the biggest benefit to the greatest amount of people. Also providing us with ideas for recommendations that we hadn't thought of. So that's the focus group. We have here a list of the institutions that participated. We tried to take a blend of institutions from all over the world, also consortium members, also single institutions from all over the world, larger institutions, smaller institutions, and this group has been invaluable in their feedback, in their thinking of what can possibly help on different areas, where we can provide input and where we can provide feedback, um, especially regarding tweaking recommendations. We come up with an idea, and then having this group to feed those ideas through, to get their feedback on, if you change the logic a little bit here, or if you add another condition there, then that'll make it much more efficient. The UI and how the recommendations look in the system, so that it provides the best um, the best service for the institutions. All these things are things that the focus group has been instrumental with, and again, I'd like to thank them for that. I'd like to go now through like different types of recommendations that we have. We can categorize recommendation, first of all, in terms of the way we work. Like in all other developments in all other areas of Alma, um, recommendation types are being added constantly on a regular basis. We have here in the slides that Yoel already shared with you, we have the link to the DARA documentation in the Knowledge Center, so you can always see the most up-to-date list there. And I'd like to use this opportunity as a plug. If anyone has any ideas 4 recommendations that they think would be relevant, that they think would be good, either things that they think that you think that in your institution you're doing very well and you think that others may not be doing and could take advantage of, or if you think that there are things that are not so straightforward and some kind of recommendation could alert you to the fact that there's something that needs to be handled, then we are very happy to get those ideas. You can use the idea exchange for that, and we are very happy to add new recommendation types, and your feedback when your ideas would be very valuable here. In terms of the different types of recommendations, I like to group them into 3 different types. First of all, there are the feature recommendations, the ones that basically are we have a feature in Alma. We can DARA can look at your institution and see that your institution is not taking advantage of this feature. Can DARA can also see that you have the relevant data or the relevant setup that makes this feature relevant for your institution, and based on that, it can recommend it. These are obviously recommendations that will probably occur once for an institution. This is something that DARA wants to tell you, okay, this is possible, and you can say, okay, I'm interested in looking at it, I'm interested in implementing it, or not. An example of that would be upload electronic holdings. DARA can see that you have the relevant collections. Then it can see that other institutions are using this feature and that are doing upload electronic holdings successfully. And based on that combination of both having other institutions working with this successfully and seeing that your institution has the relevant data that makes this feature relevant for your institution, then DARA would be able to recommend it. It's important to note that recommendations as a whole, and these recommendations maybe even more so, are on an institution level. Currently, we do not have personalized recommendations yet, so it's not like if you have several administrators in your institution, it's not that every administrator will get recommendations, and it's not that we choose one person to send the recommendation to. These are recommendations on an institution level, and if one administrator says, okay, I don't want to use this feature or I want to set it up, basically they're doing it for the entire institution. No one else will see the same recommendations. And that's the way all the recommendations work. It's even more important, let's say, in feature recommendations, which only appear once for each institution. The second type of recommendations that we have is recommendations that happen on an ongoing basis based on the data that currently exists in your institution. So I can split that into 2 different types. The first one is the analytics-based recommendations. The way this works is that we have an analytics report. Yoel will show this. We'll see this also in slides, and then Yoel will show this also in the system. But there's a report based on an analytics report, and the analytics report brings the population of that for that recommendation, and based on that, DARA will create those recommendations in Alma so that you can see them in a simple manner. What this does is it allows you to utilize the strong power of the analytics and all the different capabilities that we have there. But it allows you to feed the information from that analytics report into Alma in a basically seamless for the institution manner, so that you can just see the output of that report and have that in kind of a task list type of screen where you can just go through those recommendations and handle the things that you see fit. It's important to note that these reports can be modified by the institution in order to make the reports fit the specific institution's logic. And we'll see that in a second as well. The third type here is system-based recommendations. Again, these are ongoing recommendations that you see in the system that are based on whatever is currently happening. But these are based on internal DARA logic and not something that each institution can modify. If we take an example, sushi harvesting. So if DARA sees that that an institution has been harvesting sushi reports in a manual manner and sees that other institutions are doing it in an automatic manner, then DARA can recommend that, why don't you do it in an automated way, and then you wouldn't have to do that manual work in order to recommend it. But this is something that is based on the DARA internal logic. Here we have the complete list of the different recommendations that we have at the moment in DARA. The first set here, recommendations, are the feature recommendations that we talked about. So things like validating order information for APIs, for orders that are created by API. So there are options to prevent APIs from creating orders that don't have funding and stuff like that. And these are things that DARA can see, okay, you're using the API to create orders. You have an integration profile. That integration profile isn't configured to prevent API from creating orders that may need to be canceled later. And then it allows you it brings that to your attention and allows you to configure the integration profile appropriately. What we've tried to do in DARA in general is to allow you from the DARA list to navigate easily to the relevant screen in Alma that allows you to do that configuration. So for example, in this case, it would bring you straight to the relevant integration profile, so that you can, easily just go modify the configuration and continue on with your work in an easy manner without trying to force you to do too much, navigation through the Alma screens and figure out where you need to go. So that's something that we try to do as much as possible in these recommendations. We have more recommendations. I'm not going to go through them one by one. Again, they all exist in the Knowledge Center, which you have a link to. But we have here also the feature recommendations. We try to also create different recommendations in different areas in order to make sure that we're providing benefit to all the areas. So you can see that there were some here that are related to APIs, that are related to electronic and the upload electronic holdings, that are related to imports, that's more dealing with the cataloging and getting records in. We have things that are related to the digital side of things, the new Alma viewer and streaming to converting audio video formats to new formats so that the viewer can work better with them and so forth. Regarding the analytics-based recommendations, also there we have some that are related more to electronics, some that are related to items and physical items. And what we have here is, if you have portfolios that are unavailable, then, DARA tries to recommend that you either delete those portfolios if they're no longer relevant, or activate them so that, the patrons can see them and you can get a better service for your patrons. Same thing is for high request load. If you have a record, a bibliographic record that the patrons that are requesting this item end up waiting for a long time, then we bring that, DARA tries to bring that to your attention, and then you can review that and see what it is that you want to do. Sometimes the recommendation is a simple action, like, okay, you need to either activate the portfolio or delete the portfolio. And sometimes the action might be something that you need to look at and decide that each institution will decide what to do in their own way. So for example, a high request load, you might want to change the policies for the item. You might want to purchase another copy of the item. You might want to move one copy of the item to a location so that it's always available. All these things are different options that we have, and in this case, the librarian would need to decide what it is that they would want to do in each case. What's important to note also is that in these cases, if I say that it took a long time, long could be very different for different institutions, which is why we tried to leverage the analytics module here. what this allows each institution to do is to go and to tweak these reports and say, okay, for me, a long time is I don't want a patron waiting for more than 10 days. Another institution can say, okay, I don't want a patron waiting for more than 20 days. One institution can say this is only relevant for items that are part of this particular library. And the fact that we use analytics allows each institution to go and modify the report and make sure that they're only getting recommendations that which are really relevant for them, and they don't need to be, there's no need for DARA to bombard them with recommendations which are not relevant. And the same thing is true for these other recommendations as well. And we have the system-based recommendations. I gave the example of the sushi before as well. So we have here, we see that you have DARA sees that you have a collection that we know that other institutions are able to harvest sushi data from. And so we say, DARA is able to say, okay, we know other people are doing this. We know it's possible. We know people are doing it successfully. So maybe you want to do that. And then you can also have you can have the sushi data in analytics and have that available to you as well. The same thing is true for all kinds of linking of electronic resources to the community zone. DARA is able to go and see that the resource exists in the community zone, that you have that resource locally, and suggests to link that through to the community. Again, you can look at each one of these recommendations in more detail in the documentation. Lastly, I'd like to focus a little bit on the analytics-based recommendations because of the fact that here you have even more of an ability to modify and to tweak the recommendations which are being produced by DARA. So you can easily find the recommendations under the path that we see here. Each institution has a copy of the DARA reports in their institution, and we always have the original copy of these reports in the general ALMA section as well. You don't actually need to remember that though, because in the recommendation itself, if you see the more info icon button here that you have here, what that does is it allows you to actually go through into more info. What this does is it provides more information about why this recommendation is being created and some information. And that view button that you have at the bottom with the icon that goes out to analytics actually takes you to the analytics report. Users that have an ability to the relevant rules which allow them to modify analytics reports will be able to go and edit these reports and to tweak them and to create whatever, to change those reports in whatever way they feel best suits them. And users that don't have the rules will still be able to see what it is that the analytics report is producing, so they can see the records there as well. And you can see the reports in the institution folder as well. Here we have our institution with all the relevant analytics reports. So what we've tried to do is allow each institution to change the reports to meet their specific needs. Here there are some examples of what you might want to do. There are date restrictions in some of these reports, so you might want to change them to modify them to different date ranges, different material types, different libraries, in order to change the logic of each analytics report, which will in turn change the recommendations created by DARA. One thing that's important to note is that the recommendations are created on a weekly basis. You'll see the recommendations job in your monitor jobs. Basically, since these are generated on a weekly basis, it's not something that the reports that you see in analytics at a given time might not reflect exactly what you have in DARA. Every week, though, when that job runs, if we see that something is no longer relevant, then we will remove it from your recommendation list. But currently this is working on a weekly basis, so it's not like there's a one-to-one correlation between the report at any given time with the recommendations you have in Alma. This is true for both the report for the job that creates the recommendations based on analytics reports, as well as the one which generates the system-based reports. With that, I have completed what I wanted to share regarding how DARA started and where it came from and what it's currently doing. And I will look to see if there are any questions, and if not, then I'll pass it back to you all.
I didn't see any questions come in, Oren. Let me give one more look here. I don't see any in the Q&A. And I'm going to check the chat. I don't see any there. If anyone wants to send in a question or just unmute yourself and talk, you can do that as well. Otherwise, we'll move on now to a live demo of DARA. Okay, so thanks everybody, and thank you, Oren. Real fascinating stuff. And let's take a look here. So I'm not going to use the PowerPoint right now. You all have the link to the PowerPoint. You can all read it on your own. So DARA, I'm now in Alma, as you see. Now, before an institution can use DARA...
You're not sharing your screen.
I'm not sharing my screen. Thanks for letting me know. You see, I was just trying to make sure people were paying attention, and sure enough, they are. So let me share the screen. Share screen. All right. Thanks, Oren, for pointing that out. Okay. So before an institution can actually use DARA, they need to approve that they want DARA to be used. And that is done in the configuration and under general. And under general configuration, we have a data sharing profile. The data sharing profile is actually used by a series of functionalities. And one of them is recommendations. And as long as this recommendations is checked yes, then DARA will appear. So that's the first prerequisite. As far as which recommendations will appear, someone just wrote in a chat. Let me just take a quick look at that. I'm going to see if I can stay. Are we going to receive slide presentation to share with our colleagues? Not only are you going to receive it, but I'm going to send right now, once again, the link to the presentation. There you go. So yes, everybody will receive it. It's online, and there's the link. We showed that at the beginning, and here it is again. And we'll also post the video at the end. Back to our session. So if this is checked yes for the recommendations, you will have DARA. In addition to that, Oren showed that there are several different types of recommendations. For example, if I access the recommendations, and we're going to talk more about accessing the recommendations in a minute, we have very many recommendations. In fact, we have all of these recommendations, but there may even be more because each institution can determine which recommendations do they want to appear here. For example, maybe in my institution, I'm not interested about linking electronic resources to the community. That would be unfortunate, but maybe I'm not interested. Or missing items. Maybe I don't want that to appear. So each institution can also determine which of these recommendations they want to appear. And for that, we can go to the configuration, into administration. Help me out, Oren. Where is that recommendations list? You know what I can do? I can search and manage the...
You had it there in your general under DARA recommendations.
Sorry about that. Thanks. General DARA recommendations. Oh, right here. So here, underneath the data sharing profile, DARA recommendations, here we can determine which ones do we want to appear. For example, if I didn't want missing items to appear as one of my recommendations, I could just deactivate it here and it won't appear. That's the second thing. Now, when we come and access the recommendations, there's two ways to do it. I'm going to go back to Alma. The first way to access the recommendations is the View Recommendations link here on the top right. It says there 109 because I have 109 recommendations. Not a typical situation, but I'm in here a demo environment where on purpose, I'm always trying to make more and more recommendations. And before a demo such as this, I don't use them all up because I want to have a lot of examples. So one way is I click there and the DARA recommendations opens. Another option of opening this is to go via the menu and open from a menu. So that would be via admin recommendations manage. So we have here within Alma admin, and then we have recommendations, manage recommendations. And if I click that, it also opens. So that's how to access DARA, how to ensure that DARA is activated in your institution, and how to determine which categories of DARA will appear. So we get to the Manage Recommendations page, which is where we are now. From here, we can filter the recommendations by category or by status. A recommendation can be active or not active. We're going to talk about that more later on when we have real examples. Or in some cases, not every recommendation is relevant per library. However, when it is, such as missing items, I can filter by the library. So let's take a look at a real example. And we're going to look now at my favorite example. My favorite example, let's go into the DARA recommendations, is a brand new one, which is only available right now to that focus group that Oren had expressed profuse thanks to earlier. Because they're now testing it out, like many of our features, before they go out to the whole world. We expose them to a smaller group of users for feedback. So this one here is under a category called cataloging. And what it does is it looks via an analytics report for all records with duplicate 035 subfield A. And we'll see exactly how it looks at it. So right now, if I go look at these, I should find records with duplicate 035 subfield A's. And that would mean either the records are cataloged incorrectly. For example, it's very common, we see around the world, that somebody will take one record, duplicate it for another record, maybe from the same author, same publisher, same series, who knows? And they won't fix certain fields. And you'll have the wrong ISBN, the wrong 035. Maybe they'll even forget to switch all the subjects. In any case, it might be a wrongly cataloged record, or it may be duplicates. And that's where I see some real potential in this recommendation. I think this recommendation can be further developed at a future stage to really get some overlap in here. Let's take a look at this one here. Many titles with this one. Okay. So this should give me 9 titles that all have the same 035. Let's take a look if that's the case. So we have here Análisis de Datos y Probabilidad. And then we have again the same title. We see even it's from the same series, 3 to 5. We see it's the same author, same place of publication, same publisher, same year. Probably a duplicate, but maybe not, who knows? It could be that the institution has several portfolios from different providers. We all know the several electronic collections often have certain overlap between them. So here we have all of these records, all have the same 035. And then the institution can decide what do they want to do with this. We're going to talk more as we go along about what possible activities can be done after we get to the point where we've identified something via DARA. But right now, we're not going to do anything yet, but we could edit the record here, delete it, change the 035, look more closely what's going on. I'm going to go back, though, to the DARA list, because I want to point out something else. Oren pointed out that some of these recommendations are built within the system via machine learning, artificial intelligence, however we'd like to define that. Some of them are built from analytics reports. For example, this one here. Let's take a look at that one more time. I'm going to filter here by cataloging. And if an institution here wants to know what's going on with this one, they can always go to more info. They'll get an explanation of what is this, why are we looking at these, system control numbers, 035A, et cetera, et cetera. They can even use a set to remove those 035s if that's what they want to do. Or this view brings me, to the analytics report. Now, Oren had suggested or stated that one of the advantages of DARA using analytics reports is that each institution can come and customize it to whatever they would like. For example, let's look at the criteria and see what does this do. It gets all records not linked to the community zone, not linked to the network zone, suppressed from discovery, that there's at least 5 titles, and it's getting the top 10. It may be that the institution says, you know what, I only want records that have at least 10 titles with the same 035. So they can come and change this filter. Or top 10, that's not enough for me. I want to see the top 50. I want to see much more than I'm receiving now. They can come and change this. So that's the granularity, the ability for each institution to change according to the specific needs that's built into the DARA. Okay, let's take a look at another one now, which is not connected to an analytics report. And we'll stop for questions and comments after this next one. So here I am, and I'm going to come to DARA here. I'm in my European demo environment here. And one of the other categories, which is very useful, we see which ones are used the most here. So we've got link electronic resources to the community. Often an institution will have several portfolios which are also in the community zone, but they're managing them locally. And there are many advantages, which we won't get into now, of handling electronic resources via the community zone. You've got the community zone update task list, you've got the updates of the URLs, the access information, etc. So if I want to come here and say, I've got one here called Diversity, Inclusion, and Representation in Contemporary Dramaturgy. I think that's how you pronounce it, dramaturgy. Case studies from the field. And if I want now to link this to the community, which we're going to do in a moment, I can click right there. We'll talk about editing the notes and the attachments, time permitting later. I can remove it from the list so I don't need to see it anymore. More info will give me the general information of what's going on here. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to implement from here, link to community. That's going to link it to the community. Something I could also do with the implement here, I'm going to click that view for a minute. View brought me here directly to that portfolio. If you recall, when we did the previous recommendation, which was the 035 duplicate fields, there the view brought me directly to the analytics report. I'm going to click back. And let's link it to the community now. So I'm going to click link to the community. And it shows me now that this diversity, inclusion, and representation in contemporary dramaturgy appears 6 times in the community zone. Once for Taylor and Francis ebooks, once for Viva Taylor and Francis ebooks, once for Taylor and Francis ebooks complete, once from eBook Central, another time for eBook Central, Taylor and Francis, and another for eBook Central, Taylor and Francis. I'm going to take the eBook Central perpetual DDA, click that one. Next, I've decided which one I want to link it to in the community zone. And there we go. It's here, and you can see here, it's community zone. Next. Then I can decide, do I not only want to use the electronic resource, the portfolio information from the community zone, but do I also want to take the descriptive metadata, the title, author, subject, etc.? Of course I do. And the selected portfolios will be linked to the community, and there we go. So that is actually doing the work. We used to call that, what did we used to call that? Let's do it, Oren?
Yeah, it used to be the let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Now it's the actual function that someone does, in this case, link it to the community zone, and I'll even give it a rating, and I'll say, dear Ex Libris, I use the DARA, and I really like it. Or if I didn't like it, I can say poor and give a suggestion as to what I think should be done. Please create more recommendations. Okay, and submit, and then the staff of the DARA department, huge DARA department at Ex Libris, will get that feedback, and that'll help them in their future roadmap.
Just to take this moment to plug another thing, if you do add comments and notes, we do appreciate it. We do look at them and take those into consideration when we tweak these recommendations, when we make new recommendations. So your comments are appreciated there.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments before I go on? I want to still show, we've got 18, 17 minutes. I want to show two more types of recommendations. Then I want to talk about managing the recommendations. But let's see. I'm going to pop over to the chat. I don't see anything in the chat. Let me check the Q&A. Participants, view participants list. Hold on a minute. Let me get to the Q&A. Do you see the Q&A there, Oren? Can you tell me if you see anything?
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the Q&A.
Okay, great. Well, not great that there's no questions, but great that we can move on. Okay, and let's just see who's with us. We've got Andrea with us. Hello, Andrea. Okay. I thought I saw Fu Chen before, but he's left. Maya's with us. Hello, Maya. Paul's with us. Hello, Paul. Okay, Tiffany Wu is with us. Good morning, Tiffany. All right, so let's move on now to one called a high request load. High request load is an easy way for the institution to determine which items, not only do they have a lot of requests, but there's not enough items, and there's a long waiting period between the time someone requested the item and the time someone received the item. So let's take a look at that. So again, I'm going to access the recommendations. I clicked via the view recommendation list on the top right. And this time we will filter by high request load. So now I see all of these titles up there in another language, but we can still see exactly what's happening without even reading the title. So it says here, high request load 4, and it brings a book, which happens to mean love, ahava. So this book, Love, has a high request load. It says multiple patron physical requests were placed on Love. The time until an item becomes available was relatively long. So it's telling me here that this title, it's looking first at the title level. The title has many requests because one title could have 3 items, 2 for loan, and they have a lot of requests, for example. It says number of orders, so that's how many did you order in the last year, because you may want to order more now because there's a lot of requests. So number of requests in the last year, there were 11 requests on this title, and there's 1 item. And on average, for those 11 requests, people had to wait 16 days. And then that goes on and on. Another example where there were 11 requests, again, one item, and this time the average waiting time was 14 days. And I can go look at the title here. I can do remove, edit notes, edit attachments, which we'll talk about shortly. Or again, I can go to the more info and read more about what just happened. And if the view is clicked, that will bring me to the analytics report. I can see how is it made. And if I say to myself, wait a minute, I really don't like this list. This list, for example, I want only, let me do it back here. Maybe in this list, I only want ones with number of requests in last year greater than 15. I can change the report around, etc. So that's the high request load. Another one which we'll look at is we did, just to keep things in perspective here, we looked at records that had duplicate 035s. We looked at records which were portfolios not linked to the community zone. Here we're looking at items with a high request load, items that we may want to purchase additional copies of. And then another one might be unavailable portfolios. Portfolios which are in the system but have never been activated. For example, let's change this filter to unavailable portfolios. So here we have the portfolio of the Canadian Mathematical Bulletin is an unavailable portfolio. If we were to go look at that portfolio by saying unavailable, we mean that it's not active. The Canadian Bulletin of the Canadian Mathematical Bulletin. It's a standalone portfolio. Oh, sorry about that. Let me do this. Unavailable portfolios. That's why I was getting the. Okay. High Wire Press Journals. It's an unavailable portfolio. The collection that it's in has 3 unavailable portfolios. I can go view all of the portfolios. I can view more information about this whole recommendation. Did you want to add something there, Oren?
No, all's good. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm going to go now to the more info, and I'm going to say implement. Now, I didn't actually implement anything yet, but what did it just do here? It brought me to the electronic service editor. By default, it already filtered by not available. And if I want to, I can select them all and activate, or I can select one specific one and activate. I'm going to cancel. Not going to do anything here. But that's High Wire Press Journal has 3 unavailable portfolios. I can also click the unavailable portfolios. I get to them directly from here. Again, I can come here. I'm in the High Wire Press Journals. It brings me right to the appropriate place. Now, this is quite common. I would say quite common. It used to be more common. We changed around the interface. It used to be more common that an institution would purchase a collection, get it into their system, import, match on the community zone, whatever they're doing, and not get to the stage where they activated it, and which by default means it's not going to be in Primo. So there are records in the repository that the institution has that are not active. And this DARA is a efficient way for the institution to automatically find these. Let's see if there's any questions or comments here. I'm going back to the chat.
Yes,
I don't see
maybe just one comment. When we talked before about updating the report, if you go back to, if you cancel that for a second and go back to the recommendations,
yeah,
you can actually, what we talked about before was when you edit the report, that you could actually edit the criteria. In addition, one of the things you can do is actually add additional columns. And if you see here, you see all the part under this electronic collection has 3 unavailable portfolios. all that information is also taken from the report. So if you have something else that you feel is important to see in this screen, you can add another column, and that column will be added to the view in the DARA recommendations, so you could see that as well.
Thanks, Doran. Okay, so, and just to point out, this is the report here for the high request load. So these are the columns Oren was referring to. Another one, if you remember, let's take a look actually. Let's go side by side. When we looked here for category high request load, we have columns here. Oh, sorry about that. I said high request load. So we have number of orders in the last year, number of requests, number of items, average number of days to available. And those are number of requests last year, number of days to available, number of orders. These are all coming from these columns that Oren pointed out. So we could add a column, get rid of a column, and like we already showed on the previous report, we could also come here and change the criteria. Okay. Anything else to add on that, Oren?
That's it.
Okay. Let me just see if there's any other questions here. No questions. I'm always a little concerned when there's no questions that perhaps people aren't hearing anymore. Let's just do a quick check. Just send in a note, yes, I hear you, if all of the communication is still going well and you still hear me and still see me. Okay, people are writing that they hear me. Great. Oh, Tamar Ganor is with us. Good morning, Tamar. Okay, great. So let's go on. Let's talk now about managing the recommendations. We got what we did up till now is we got a small taste of the recommendations. We looked at 4 different ones. Let me just make sure where I am. So I'm here in my EU demo and a couple of other things. It might be that I already looked at this accessibility inclusion. Let's take a different one. I want to use that one in my later one. Marketing technology as a service. It might be that I don't want this one to appear anymore. So I can remove it. And now it's not going to be there anymore. Other. It does not interest me. Okay, so I can put in my own note. Or I can say this one here, I'm going to say remove. You can see now that for link electronic resources to the community, I have 43. I'll take one, I'll remove, and I'll choose one of the defaults. Okay, confirm. And now we're down to 42. So I can remove ones. I can also edit some notes. Need to consult Jimmy and Sally. Okay, so now I made a little note. I can also add an attachment, add to that note. So that's got the note in there. Other things I can do, let's go in here. Let's go again to the link electronic resources to the community. I might want to attach something to that. Brings me to the same place as I was with the notes and the attachments, and I can add an attachment here.
What the notes allow you to do is allow you to make sure that multiple people aren't working on the same recommendation. So if someone started looking at it and said they want to take care of it, they can put in a note so that you can see, oh, this one has a note. I won't start looking at it if I'm someone else.
And here we have a link to the note.
Right.
There we are. I need to consult Jimmy and Sally. So immediately I see that something's going on with that one. And let's get out of there. Okay. So we talked about removing it, adding notes, adding attachments. We can also filter here by active and not active. And there were the ones which were dismissed that we got rid of. We can also, let's go back to all here. We can also do it by library. Now, again, we said library is only relevant for certain ones. So not every entity has a library. So here I've gone only by main library. I've got 34 for linking electronic resources to the community. If I go to my library and information science library, then I have less. So if a user, a staff user, works primarily with a specific library, he or she can come along and filter only by that specific library. Now that's going to be an important one, for example, for the missing items. Missing items is, I think that's one of our first recommendations, isn't it, Doran? Missing items goes way back. You don't remember, Oren, which is our first one? Our date recommendation? So here we've got one here, which has been around. This item with this barcode has been missing for a long time. Now, missing since, barcode, location, name, etc. Like Oren mentioned before, those are all columns I'm going to view inside the analytics report, and that brings me right to the analytics report. And we can come along here, edit this, and change our criteria if desired. There's one other point I want to make. We have 3 minutes left. These DARA reports, Oren showed in the presentation 2 folders. One folder for the default out-of-the-box reports and one folder what's actually used for DARA. And I would like to expand on that. So here, the ALMA folder every institution has a folder called DARA. These we'll call the clean reports, the ones which are put here under the ALMA folder, which, as you know, is a read-only folder. Institutions cannot change, remove, delete, or create anything in the ALMA folder. They can only read, use them, but in a read mode. And my institution here is called Alma University. Under Alma University, or under all of your institutions, there's a folder reports with a folder DARA. These are the ones that are actually used by Alma, by the DARA. So these are the reports that if these are edited, that will influence how DARA works. These are also the reports that we get to when we click the view. It brings us directly to the reports under the institutions folder. Okay, it's 8:59 local time, which means we have less than 60 seconds left. Let's do one final check to see if there's any questions or comments. I don't see any here in the chat. Oren, do you see any in the Q&A?
I don't see anything.
Okay, so thanks everybody for joining us. We will be posting the recording of this either later this evening or tomorrow, and we'll be sending out the link to the Alma list, and it will be on the customer webinars page that we showed at the beginning. Thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.